Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing okay. So I felt like I needed to bring a little bit of colour to my channel, and if you follow me on Instagram you'll know that I do bright and colourful makeup looks like this pretty much daily. So I saw this picture from an artist called Judas on Instagram and I really wanted to recreate it. It's not exactly the same as the picture, but I think it still looks nice. So if you'd like to see how I created this makeup look, then please keep on watching. Okay, so as you can see I've already done this eye, so we're going to be doing the exact same on the other eye. Fingers crossed. I'm using the P. Louise base in the shade number 2 as my primer, and I'm going to be carving out under my brows. I've already brushed them up with a little bit of brow soap, so I'm just going to use this underneath to carve them out. And this is just going to create a really nice clean base when we go on top with our colourful eyeshadows. So I like to carve out underneath my brow to kind of create a structure, and then I will go in and fill them in afterwards. And then we're going to pat that base all over the eyelid, and I'm going to blend it out towards my temples as well. This is just so that when I blend out the outer corner of the eyeshadow, oh my god, I look crazy. This is just so when I blend out the outer corner of that eyeshadow, it's got something to sit on top of. So once I'm happy with that, I'm going to go in with a little buffer brush and I'm going to blend out the edges. This makes a whole lot of difference for when you then go on with foundation, because if I was to leave that to set and dry, it will go a little bit patchy around that area, where it's a lot of thick P. Louise base and then it blends into the foundation, it will go a little bit patchy. So you just want to blend that out into the skin so it's really smooth. And obviously I was a bit messy with it, so it has gone slightly around the outer corners of my eyes, so I'm just going to buff everywhere and just make sure it's really smooth into the skin. I'm going to be using the Beauty Bay palette and I'm going in with the shade Wisteria, which is this purpley one here. And I'm taking that on a little tiny definer brush. These shadows do have a lot of kickback and a lot of fallout, and it doesn't really matter because obviously we've done eyes first anyway, but I do kind of just try and get a little bit of that excess off. I'm going to start creating that shape, and this is the darkest shade that I'm going to be using as well, so I'll go on with this one first. I'm just popping this in the socket. You can already see how much that falls out. I'm not really blending it as such, I'm almost just applying a colour first and then I'll go ahead and blend it. I just want to create that shape first. Look at that fallout. I considered doing my base first for this. So glad I didn't. I love these eyeshadows, but I don't really find it as much with the other colours. I think it's just the purples. They are just so powdery. Really nice on the eye. Like, look how pigmented that is, but it's just so much fallout. And then I'm just using the kitchen roll that's in front of me and I'm going to dust off the excess that's on the brush, and then I'm going to go to the very edge and just buff out the edge of that shadow. And this makes it a whole lot easier for when I add my next shade. I can lay that on top and then it's more of a gradient. Me personally, I just find this so much easier with a smaller detailer brush like this one. Obviously where I've got deep set eyes, it's harder to get right into my socket. So this brush really works well for me. You might find that when you're doing your own eye makeup that bigger brushes work best, so it's obviously just experimenting to figure out what works best for your eye shape. So just using a little small buffer brush like this one, I'm going to be taking the shade Boy Bye from the Carnival palette and mixing it in with Heat Wave from the Beauty Bay palette. So I don't want it to be like super orange, because I find that when you blend a purple into a bright orange it can go quite muddy. So I'm mixing in Boy Bye because this one's a little bit more of like a, what kind of shade is it? Like a watermelon shade? And I'm taking that on a smaller brush, and what I'm going to be doing is circular motions, buffing that onto the area that we've just buffed out. I take my time with this step because I want to make sure that I apply enough product. And don't worry if you start to see the purple underneath slightly disappear, because we do go back in and relayer those shades back in again. Just blend that all the way out, don't forget about that outer corner. So one thing to remember when you're doing colourful makeup is that it's going to look a lot worse before it looks better. So you can see the finished result. This is what we have to go through to get there. Just be patient with it and don't expect it to look amazing straight away, because blending is a process and you have to take your time before it's going to look good. It's going to look so bad before it looks good. I've just wiped off the excess on that little brush onto the tissue paper, and I'm going to do the same thing and buff out that edge. I'm just taking a slightly bigger brush, so even though it's still quite small in comparison to my eye, it's a little bit more fluffy, which is what you want to do when you're blending colours from the socket upwards towards your brow. You want to start off with a smaller brush and get bigger the closer you go towards the eyebrow. I'm taking this brush with the shade Foolish from the Stacey Marie palette. This is like a peach colour. Because I don't want the eyeshadow to go very yellowy, I want it to stay quite orangey and peachy. I'm going to take this shade first, and then we'll mix in a little bit of yellow in a minute. Okay, so now I've buffed that out a little bit, I'm going to go back in with my first little teeny tiny brush, and this one we're going to go back in with the purple shade, Wisteria, and I want to work that back in to the orange. Don't want to lose that colour, and I almost bring it slightly higher now, working it into that second shade. But I'm really light with it. You don't want to be too heavy when you're bringing the colours together. If you go on quite heavy-handed, you might find that it either goes a bit patchy, or obviously you apply more colour than you want to. You might see that just slightly starts to go into more of a blend into that orangey shade that we use next. Now I'm going to go back in with that smaller buffer brush, and I'm going to take the shade Heat Wave, which was the orange from the Beauty Bay palette. I wish I could just use one palette. I always do this. Dip into millions of palettes and then I forget which one I'm using. Just doing the same step, circular motions for this bit. You see that's slightly starting to come together and looking very similar to what the other eye looks like. And you essentially want it to be as much of a gradient as you can possibly get it. So you don't want there to be a lot of block colours. So be patient and spend your time blending. It pays off. Anyway, pleased with the result. Slowly starting to come together. Now we're going to take the shade Tangerine Dream from the Beauty Bay palette, ever so slightly over the top of the edge of that shade we just used. If that makes any sense. I don't want it to go too much into the brow, even though it does slightly blend up towards that anyway. I don't want it to be too much in the brow, so I'm trying to keep it as close to the next shade as possible. Now I'm going in with the shade Hello Sunshine. This is a yellow. I'm really lightly going to blend that into that last shade. Going back in with that purple. Don't be afraid to just keep going backwards and forwards with your colours until you're happy with the finished result, because it takes time bringing that even higher. But really lightly, and I haven't added any more of that purple to the brush. I'm just using the excess. Hopefully the blend should end up something like this. Just ignore anything that's fallen down on the lid, or if it's not a super crisp line, because we create that with the cut crease now. I'm going in with a little bit of this lip balm. Please excuse the state of it. This is not actually for my lips. I purely use this lip balm for cutting my crease. I have about 6 of these little lip balms, and this one is just purely for any cut creases. So I learnt this trick from a P. Louise IGTV. So she uses Vaseline for hers, so you can use Vaseline. Don't use minty Vaseline. I'm going with this brush, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be creating that cut crease line, and the lip balm is actually going to melt away any of the eyeshadow in the product, and then when we go to clean up with a little bit of a face wipe, it will be really, really crisp and clean. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that every time you pop the product on the eye that you also wipe it away as well, because you will get a little bit of a build-up of purple, whatever colour you're using as your darkest shade. That will then be on the brush, and you'll just be dragging that all across your eye. So just either wipe it on the tissue in front of you or on just the back of your hand, and that will make sure that it's always really clean. So you can see the shape that I've created. I've tried to keep it as close to the other eye as I possibly can. I'm going in with a face wipe and a cotton bud. If I had my fake nails on, then I would use my fake nails and a face wipe, but I don't, so I'm using a cotton bud. And what I'm going to be doing is just cleaning up that lip balm to create a really clean line for our cut crease to go on. I never ever use face wipes for anything other than this, or cleaning up any fallout, anything like that. I don't use them for removing my makeup at all. So you'll see how easy it is to take away that product, and how clean of a line it will leave as well. And then I just wipe away any of that fallout or base that might be left underneath because we don't need it. So now for the cut crease, I'm going to use a couple of P. Louise's colourful bases. These are from her winter collection. So I've got Vivid Violet and Winter Rose here. I'm starting out with the purple shade, and I'm going to be applying this all the way along the cut crease, leaving out the middle part because that's where we'll pop the pink, and then all the way out. Doesn't matter if any comes underneath the eye because again we will clean that up afterwards as well. I just kind of press and stamp this onto the eye. I'm not trying to create a perfect line because I find that never works, no matter how hard I try. As I come further out to the outer corner, I find it easier to draw a line than to stamp it. I'm using the pink shade just in the middle. I'm not too worried if it blends in with the purple because I do apply eyeshadow on top in a moment. This is just as the base. I'm just using a really old Morphe brush. It's just a little buffing brush like this one, and I'm just going to blend the colours together. Not that I've ever tried leaving the bases, but I do find that they're very wet and shiny, and I do want it to be quite matte, so I am going to go on top with some eyeshadow. So for the purpley colour, neither of those palettes have a nice pastel-y purple, so of course I'm going in with yet another palette, and I'm using the Morphe Icy Fantasy palette, just this shade here. Not a clue what the name is because I've lost the sheet, so it's just the pastel-y purple colour. I'm taking this on a flat synthetic brush, and I'm going to pat this on top of the purpley base. I'm going in with the shimmery purple shade, this one up here, just to kind of blend the pink and the purple together. I'm just using the same brush the whole time, by the way. I'm just cleaning off the brush in between. I'm going to take, closing this palette now, we don't need her anymore. I'm using Tutu from the Beauty Bay palette. This is just a pink, it's the lightest pink in the palette. Ideally, if you had a lighter pink similar to the base, I'd go on with that, but I don't own a colour like that. So we're just going to make do with what we've got. Again, just patting that onto the eyelid, straight in the middle. Okay, so for the centre of the lid, it slightly is more of like a yellowy sparkle. I'm going to use the shade Rise and Shine from the Beauty Bay palette, just on a smaller brush. Pack that on in the middle, straight on top of the pink. And then for a little bit more glitter, I'm using the Morphe Glisten Up palette. This one here, Shine Hope, which is like the sparkly yellow. I think I'm happy with that. So I'm going to clean up the outer edge. Again, going in with a little bit of my lip balm and that lip balm brush. I'm going to clean it up like the other side. Cool, I think I'm happy with that. And obviously if anything's a little bit messy underneath there still, then we can clean it up with concealer a little bit later. So I'm just going to be using my Collection Extreme 24-Hour Felt Tip Eyeliner just to create a line along the lash line. Just applied a little bit of my Too Faced Better Than Sex mascara, and now I'm going to go and do my eyebrows. So obviously I've already brushed them up with a little bit of brow soap. I'm going in with the Morphe Micro Brow Pencil. This is in the shade Hazelnut. I'm just going to fill in the areas that I want to be filled in. So for lashes, these were kindly sent to me by a fellow makeup artist on Instagram. Her name's Mia Cousins. These are her lashes in the style Diamond, and they're just this kind of flared... Stop laughing. They're just this kind of flared style lash. They are amazing. You can't even feel them on your eyes. They're so good. So I'm using the Glam Glow Omega Rich Moisturiser as my moisturiser. Deep. Obviously we have a couple of friends joining us today on my skin. They are unwanted guests, but you know, everyone gets spots. I'm also going to use the Bobbi Brown Vitamin Rich Face Base as my primer. This stuff, I say it in every video, it smells amazing. So I've been desperate for this foundation for the longest time. This is the NARS Natural Radiant Longwear Foundation, and I was looking on Google for the colour matches because I had no idea what kind of colour I was going to be, but I bought the wrong colour. It's a bit too dark, so I'm going to mix in a little bit of my Ordinary Serum Foundation. Never done this before, so I don't know how well it's going to go, but this is a lighter shade in the Ordinary foundation, so I'm hoping that it will kind of balance it out a little bit. I don't think that's too bad. I think that looks alright. Okay, I've just buffed that in with my brush. For contour, I'm going to use the Makeup Revolution Fast Base Stick Foundation. As I said, I think the last video, this is far too dark for me, so I'm going to use it sparingly. But it blends out really, really seamlessly, so you can kind of get away with it. And I buff that in with a brush. So this is me coming to you while I'm editing. Obviously a big chunk of footage is missing. I've just moved to an amazing new camera, but it stopped recording without me realising, hence why my makeup is now complete. So to finish off the eyes, I just repeated the same 3 colours along the lower lash line. The purple, the orange and the peachy and the yellow colours we used before. And then I popped the purple base in my waterline too. Again guys, so sorry about this technical problem, still getting used to the camera, but these things do happen and I didn't want to waste the rest of the video by not uploading. I've taken notes for next time. So this is the finished makeup look. I'm really happy with how it turned out, even though it's not an exact recreation of the picture we used. You know, we tried that and it did not suit my eye shape. If you guys enjoyed this little tutorial, please make sure that you hit the like button. It does really, really help me out. And if you want to comment too, that's cool too. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys so much for watching and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!